Note this about sleeping difficulties. Today I'm addressing the topic of not being able to fall asleep. I've been a clinical psychologist for 8 years and this is what I know. In this video, I want to talk about another cause of having trouble falling asleep. There are many reasons for why we can face problems falling asleep. One of them is fear-coupled sleep. I see this sleep difficulty with some of my clients in my clinic. The problem comes when a client has taught themselves that going to sleep is uncomfortable. Not on purpose, but by accident and by their actions to experiencing sleep difficulties. In today's video, I'll try to explain what's going on in sleep difficulties based on fear coupling or discomfort coupling, and hopefully help you know one more reason of why you sometimes cannot sleep. The human mind is vastly complex, but also in many terms simple. We can learn and unlearn, and we do such on the basis of reward and punishment. A lot of our behavior is based on our biology and innate need of survival, but also many of our behaviors are learned and have become intrinsic knowledge or subconscious knowledge that we've come to possess. This subconscious knowledge guides our behavior, and this makes us quite efficient overall, as we don't have to become conscious about every act we take. The way that humans or our brains learn is thought to be based on trial and error. If we do a thing and it has a successful outcome in the form of pleasure or reward, we'll likely repeat that action in the future. If we continue to have the same outcome when we do the action, this will become part of our general behavior. This is now a learned behavior or a habit. Oppositely, if we do a thing and it has a painful outcome or is uncomfortable, we'll learn to stay away from doing so in the future. This is how avoidance takes form. If we learn that something is too uncomfortable, we'll generally stay away from it, and if we're approaching the behavior or something similar to what has been coded to be uncomfortable or unwanted, then we'll be alert, as our system knows that this is unwanted or not good for us. Sort of our mind and body flashing an error code. This is a very simplistic description of what goes on in our vast minds, but yet it's used to describe a lot of causality in psychology around behavior. Anyways, imagine you've had a lot of uncomfortable experiences lying and turning and worrying and stressing in your bed. How would you then come to think of the experience of going to bed? Would you likely think that that sounds pleasurable and want it? Or would you likely have connected it with discomfort and something you would rather avoid? Some of the clients I see have developed this phenomenon. They will have cued their brain to expect discomfort around going to sleep, and they will as such try to delay going to bed or try to avoid the situation overall. Of course they sleep sometimes, but they don't look forward to a good night's sleep or think of falling asleep as something nice. I often hear that they try to procrastinate going to bed or to tire themselves out so much that they almost pass out into sleep. It's described as quite uncomfortable and stressful and often lead them to sleep too little overall or oversleep in the morning. For these clients, a bed or night routine seems inexistent. Their nightly routine seems mostly based on tiring themselves out so much that they sort of pass out in the evening. They often have problems due to their delaying of sleep, for example, staying up really late in the evening, thus getting too little sleep overall, making them either unstable during the day or not being able to get up in the morning, causing them to miss school or work, and this way fathoming problems with their mental health on the basis of self-criticism. We have to treat this problem kind of like a phobia, as it's similar, that instead of avoiding, we try exposure therapy. That just means that the client has to place themselves in the uncomfortable situation instead of avoiding it. That they should stop their behavior of avoiding or delaying going to bed or using extreme fatigue to make them fall asleep. They should go to bed on purpose and not avoid it. Avoiding as a behavior will often lead to more fear of the thing over time. Therefore, stopping avoidance will lead to multiple good outcomes. Hereunder, by stopping avoidance, we stop the further development of fear. By stopping avoidance and exposing the client to the situation, we make them able to test out in reality if it is as uncomfortable as they or their brain predicts. Sometimes by testing it out, we find that it's less uncomfortable than what our brain thinks, and thus the brain has a chance to modify its future predictions and sound less loud error code when we approach this behavior going forward. Another beneficial outcome of exposing ourselves to discomfort is that by frequent exposure, it usually becomes less uncomfortable over time. The more we do a thing, the less interesting the brain thinks it is. This is called habituation and consists of the brain slowing or reducing or downregulating its reaction to things we do a lot. We become less allergic, one can say. This is what we usually see when people with dog phobia pet the dog for the 20th time as compared to the first time. The fear gradually becomes less and less. It might sound hard for us to say that clients just do what they fear or find horrible, but after having spoken to the client and explained them how this can help them with their problem, they're usually motivated to give it a go. We then proceed to plan out what their new going to sleep routine should be. This will help them when they have to practice it at home and give them a higher chance of staying motivated and get success. If we have a plan or script of what to do, it's easy to get started with something we find difficult. The harder something is for one of my clients, the more exact and specific I try to make their plans for what to do when exposing them to the situation they fear. I'm mindful that as their discomfort within sleep situations have been created also by them being uncomfortable in the situation in the past in the first place, so our plan needs to contain something that might make them less uncomfortable. What this is different from individual to individual, but it's usually a technique for self-comfort or activity. In my experience, this approach is key to successful exposure and reversing unfavorable learning. To design a situation where it's uncomfortable but tolerable because we use skills to make it so in the situation. This way, we can do the thing we need to do and with time become more comfortable with the situation. I don't advise to just do it without techniques or some feeling of safety or control, as this usually just makes it too uncomfortable for the client and then they won't do it. And then they'll be back to avoidance and maintaining their fear or discomfort. After having repeated the exposure many times and becoming more comfortable doing so, then we can move on to working on being able to tolerate more difficult situations or do without our temporary skills or techniques of comfort. Trying to delay something we perceive to be uncomfortable or hard can also be linked to procrastination. I have some pretty interesting videos on procrastination coming up if you're interested. I think this was all we had time for. What was your takeaway from today's video? As always, feel free to take away the information you can use, if any, and leave the rest. Hopefully you found that today's topic made sense and I didn't waste your time. Please subscribe or like this video so my channel can grow. Take care and see you for the next one.